It's time for the Spoony One! Wrestling Show! It's time for the Spoony One! Wrestling Show!
I hope you realize good news first. Sean Faust will be taking over my regularly scheduled WWE programming and covering Raw and SmackDown. Dude knows what he's talking about, and I was really impressed with his first show. So, from now on, or at least as soon as he can get started, he's going to actually be covering the Wrestle episodes for the Wrestle episodes for WWE, which should be a lot of fun. Which can save me the time, and I can focus exclusively on Impact. I watched Impact. How is it possible that every week TNA manages to put on the worst show I've ever seen in my life? I'm just like, I know they've done worse. This is the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. And I'm not that guy who... I don't engage in hyperbole like that. I know you, like, people think I do, but I don't. I always qualify the answer. Like, I always say, like, oh, this is the worst movie I've seen this year, or this is the worst RPG I've ever played. You know, I try to, like... when I engage in hyperbole, I try to at least focus the hyperbole to, like, one specific thing. I'm not making sense. This show was the worst show I've ever seen in my life. Every week it's the worst show I've ever seen. And I already feel bad because my brother's trying to sleep upstairs. And I know I'm going to be fucking yelling because this show was so fucking stupid. And okay. Show starts off by recapping the No Surrender semi-final match for the TNA World Heavyweight Championship between Kurt Angle and Jeff Hardy. Now, I didn't see this pay-per-view, but they showed us pretty much all we needed to know from the recap at the beginning of the episode. So, the way it works is they wrestle for a long time, and then they go to a 20-minute time limit draw. Okay. You know, alright. So, Eric Bischoff comes out, and he says... I think him and Dixie come out and they talk and they're like, you know what, we're going to give you 5 more minutes. So, I should note, by the way, that when the time limit draw occurred, Jeff Hardy was in the ankle lock. Like, currently, like he had no chance and the time ran out. So, Jeff Hardy basically got saved by the draw, which is actually kind of an interesting story, which was never mentioned again. But they get 5 more minutes. And they go to they go to a draw. And so they go, we're going to give you 5 more minutes. And at some point in the middle of this, Kurt Angle gets cut. And he's bleeding all over the place. They go to another 5-minute draw. So they wrestled 30 minutes now. They get in the ring. And people are like toweling Kurt's head off. And they're looking at the cut. And Eric Bischoff goes, I'm sorry, Kurt. Your cut is too deep to continue. You're bleeding too much. I'm declaring this match a no contest. So, a draw. This isn't even by far the stupidest thing that occurs on this show. By far! But already... we are entering a world now that does not play by any rules of logic or reason. Because this one concept, the fact that this match ended in a no contest because of blood loss or a dangerous cut, it dominated the entire show's proceedings. Because everything that happened in the show involving Kurt and Jeff branched out from that particular story. Okay. Now, I just got through watching The Ultimate Fighter, the new season of The Ultimate Fighter. And they didn't have any matches that ended like this, but I have seen so many matches in the UFC. I've ordered pay-per-views of UFC. And whenever there is an opponent in an Ultimate Fighting match or a boxing match who either his eye is swollen shut, or he's got an obviously broken bone, or he's got a cut over his eye that is obscuring his vision. The blood loss is too great, and it's potentially obscuring his vision. It's over his eye, he can't see. Do you know what happens there? I'll tell you. What happens there is the referee will stop the match and call the doctor over to look at it. The doctor will look at it, and if he deems it too much of a hazard to the fighter because he can't see, or because he's too injured to continue, it's called a doctor stoppage. And you know what happens on a doctor stoppage? You lose! You lose the match on blood loss. You lose the match on a doctor stoppage. So, if Kurt Angle were cut, and it was hazardous, and by the way, I saw the cut on the tape, and it didn't look that bad at all. Like, yeah, his face was all covered in blood, which was gory, it was nasty, but they toweled it off. It wasn't like he was gushing or anything like that. It wasn't covering his eyes. It wasn't that bad. But if Kurt did lose due to a doctor stoppage, which Eric is not a doctor, by the way, he says, I'm sorry, your blood loss is too great. It's a no contest. No, it's not. Kurt loses on a doctor stoppage. That's how real life works, guys. Real life, Dixie. Do you know anything, Dixie? Have you ever seen a legitimate sport, a legitimate full contact fighting sport in your life? I know it's not real. Like, I can't believe I have to say this. I know it's not real, but the point behind professional wrestling is all the proceedings take place as if it were real. Like, as if this hyper-violent, ridiculous sport were real. Eric comes out, and he gets Jeff and Kurt in the ring, and he says, you guys put on the greatest match I've ever seen in my life. You guys, all the stuff, they must say this every fucking week. But, like, Hulk Hogan is usually the one who says this, but Eric says, like, you raised the bar, you gave it 130%, you guys did everything, I'm gonna suck you off right now. He says, but, we need to have a contender for Mr. Anderson Bound for Glory. So, I know this is not going to make everyone happy, but it's going to make you two happy. It's going to be Mr. Anderson versus Jeff Hardy versus Kurt Angle in a three-way dance at Bound for Glory. And we're like, all right. Pardon me. And so the two guys are like, oh, yeah, it kind of makes sense. It's how it goes. It was a draw. And so then Dixie comes out. I'm sorry. That's just a reflex whenever I say the word Dixie. See, it keeps happening. I don't know what it is. Just, when Dixie comes out, all interest in the world just flies out the window. It's gone! It's gone! And by the way, this is another tangent I'm going to go on. I've gone on record several times by saying that the TNA audience is pretty much the easiest audience of marks in the world. Seriously, the Impact Zone is full of fucking sheep. Because you'd have to be. You would fucking have to be a fucking mark. A complete sheep for this product to want to go see it in person. Can you imagine the mental illness you need to experience to want to see this shit live? So, if people are actually in the Impact Zone watching this, they are the ultimate diehard fans. The last 2 or 3 weeks, even they don't care. I said, like, in the Jeff Jarrett and Kevin Nash angle, like, they're talking about shit and nobody is understanding it, and the audience is so quiet I can hear the air conditioners going. Like, I may have actually undersold the Sting and Kevin Nash and Jarrett thing, They don't care about any of this. Like, really, they were so dead silent during this whole thing. And, like, when Dixie comes out, they're just just totally silent. Like, they couldn't give a shit. The only noise I heard them make all night was during the Sting. I'm sorry, not the Sting match. Kurt Angle and Jeff Hardy when they had the rematch later on the main event. They were actually like on their feet for like, yay, wrestling. Sorry, I kicked the camera. So Dixie comes out, and she says, what does she say? She's so vapid and uninteresting, I almost forget. She says she was so awed. She was so impressed and so blown away by the effort and the heart that they showed at Bound for Glory that she thinks that they deserve better than a triple threat. So she's going to, since Hulk Hogan overruled her about Ric Flair, because Hulk Hogan can do that, because Hulk Hogan can overrule the president of the company, she's going to overrule Eric Bischoff. So I guess the hierarchy is Hulk Hogan, Dixie Carter, Eric. Okay, so she's going to overrule Eric, because she can, somehow. And she's going to declare a rematch between Kurt and Jeff with no time limit. Okay, whatever. Now I go back to my notes. Backstage, the Pope is angry. He says that he's going to talk to Bischoff. So he goes around, running around, and he runs into Sting and Kevin Nash. This is never followed up on. Commercial. We come back. We see Tommy Dreamer coming out of a gas station. There's a camera, like a I don't even know what to call him. Who is this guy? There's a cameraman who catches Tommy coming out of a gas station, and there's a subtitle that says, Yonkers, New York. And the cameraman catches Tommy getting in the car. And he says, Tommy, what's next for EV2? And Tommy says, what's next? Maybe we go home. And he drives off. That whole thing took maybe 8 seconds. So, total nonstop action sent a cameraman to Yonkers. They flew a cameraman to Yonkers, where he found Tommy at random coming out of a gas station. He didn't go to Tommy's house. He didn't look Tommy up in a phone book. He happened upon Tommy Dreamer in a gas station in Yonkers and got him one question for 6 seconds, and then he drove off. Mission accomplished! The cameraman flies back to Florida from Yonkers. This is the stupidest shit I've ever seen. Yonkers. Kevin Nash comes out with Sting for his match against Samoa Joe. The crowd dead silent, as I've noted, as they are for pretty much everything to do with this horrible, fucking, confusing ass, do-nothing angle. I will now quote the announcers, because the announcers have summed up this 2-month angle better than I ever could have. This has been going on for over 2 months. Announcers. Hang on. Wait for it. And I quote, "We cannot get answers. We don't know what is going on. What is Nash talking about? What is Sting talking about? We hear Jeff Jarrett talking about politics. What is going on? I don't know." Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mike Tenay. Thank you, Taz. That's about it. We don't know what they're talking about. Nor do we fucking care. But this whole... I've gone over this endlessly. This whole thing is about, like, WCW politics, but we don't know. The fuck? So, like, if I don't know, and the crowd doesn't know, and they don't, the announcers admit they don't know. The announcers admit they can't take an interest in this fucking storyline because they don't know what the fuck is going on. This gets dumber. Okay, so they proceed to have a really shitty match, Nash and Samoa Joe. It spills to the outside. Okay, so they're beating the crap out of each other, and then all of a sudden, Sting turns Joe around and blatantly punches him in the face. Full view of the ref. No disqualification. Jeff Jarrett comes flying out of the crowd or somewhere, spins fucking Kevin Nash around, punches Nash in the face. All four men are fighting outside the ring. The ref looks at all four men and starts counting 1, 2. Are you out of your mind? How is that not a DQ? Like, what the fuck do you have to do to get DQ'd in TNA? That's not even close. It's not like some guy held a guy's feet when he was coming off an Irish whip and tripped him up, and the guy's like, "Hey, you stop that now! Like, you know, just stop making yourself a nuisance." And no. Like, he spun him around and punched him in the face. That's a DQ. But no, this goes on. They keep fighting, and they fight forever. But they keep counting until the ref reaches 10. In which case, now the ref turns around and calls for the bell. Because that's a double countout. Oh! Obviously. The fuck do I know? Now, I have many questions, but I have one pertinent question for this, like, right now. What the fuck did that accomplish? What did it gain anyone to call that a double countout instead of a disqualification? A double disqualification, even. Like, it's not a double disqualification, but let's just call it one. Like, would it have mattered if they, like... What the fuck was the point of that? A DQ or a countout, the match gets thrown out. It's not like it matters. But, no, like, the ref looked at this proceedings and made the decision, I'm not calling for the bell on this. I'm counting to 10. So they then proceed to have one of the most see, I stopped myself on the edge of hyperbole there. See? I show restraint. They have one of the most unconvincing old man pull-apart brawls, like where there's like 20 referees and road agents and security guards trying to pull them apart. But apparently, you can't stop fucking Jeff Jarrett and Sting when they're going at it, so... And so they keep fighting, and they keep going around, and then they go backstage. Oh, sorry, I have one more classic line from Mike Tenay, and I quote, "If you have proof, if you have something to say it or get off the pot." I don't think you quite have that one right, Mike, but anyway. So Nash and Sting are shown backstage, and they say it's not about having matches. This is a war, and at Bound for Glory, we're gonna kill you, and during the intervening 3 minutes, apparently Sting found time to fix his makeup because his face mask was a little perfect. It was really good. Tara and Madison are yelling at Lacey Von Erich to get dressed. Oh, good, she's back. Remember when she was gone? Jay Lethal versus Douglas Williams for the X Division Championship. This was an astoundingly slow and boring match. And I like both Jay Lethal and Doug Williams. I really do. Lethal wins clean with the Lethal combination. They then proceed to celebrate his win in ostentatious fashion. Jay Lethal throws his arms in the air. They give him the belt, and confetti rains from the ceiling. It's a big celebration, and luckily, the confetti's in colors that matches Jay Lethal's tights. It would have been really embarrassing had Doug Williams won and the confetti came out not matching his colors at all, but that's just me. So, this was weird. You know, I hate to piss on the parade here, but I didn't quite understand. Like, this is just kind of... In the face of all the other shitty decisions that were made on this show, and it gets worse, this seems like a minor nitpick, and actually this probably would have been a major nitpick on any other show. But the announcers are talking about how this is a huge win for Jay, and Jay's come so far. He hasn't had a title in 2 years, and this is the end of a long road, a 2-year road for Jay Lethal as he's finally regained gold. And I'm like, that is a good story, isn't it? You know, this guy has been struggling to find his identity and struggling to find his edge and get back on top. You know, a 2-year scratching and clawing to get to the top of the mountain and get a belt. I'm like, that's a good story. And it would have been if they'd told that story at any point leading up to this. At no point before this did they ever mention that Jay Lethal had gone without a title for 2 years, that Jay Lethal was even seeking a title this whole time, that Jay Lethal was seeking a path to the X Division. At no point were any roadblocks thrown against him to attaining a title. At no point did Jay cut a promo saying, like, I really want to get back on top. Like, I really want to attain a championship again. And then my first step is the X Division title. At no point did they build a program between Douglas Williams and Jay Lethal. They wrestled, like, one time. Like, I can't even remember when. And they're like, oh, okay, you're number one contender all of a sudden, and he wins. And they're like, parade! It didn't make sense to me. You know, sorry. All this bitching gets me parched. I don't know. The 2-year journey thing, great story if they'd have told it properly. They didn't. Oh, yeah. This whole match, they were really talking about Douglas Williams and how Ric Flair, like, Douglas Williams is kind of a foot soldier of Ric Flair, because Ric Flair runs Fortune. And he says, Douglas Williams is on orders from Ric Flair to retain this title now because Ric Flair is trying to make Fortune amass all the titles you can, or all the titles they can, because if you have titles, that carries power with it. So if you have all the titles, you got all the power. And so when Jay Lethal beat Doug Williams, Mike Tenay says, quote, Fortune loses a title, Fortune loses power. How? It's a simple question. How? What power? Is it like the 3 elven rings of power? Like, if you have the ring... how does having the X Division Championship give Ric Flair power? You have a belt. Like, you're the champion, okay, and I guess you can... You don't even really have any say in who your contenders are. You defend the title. I'm guessing you can get a pay raise, you know, in the real sports atmosphere of it, but what power do you... Like, can you lift things with your mind? Is that what the X... Like, I don't know. Fortune lost power that night. We cut backstage. This is where it gets fun. Okay, we cut backstage where we see Abyss, who is dragging a dead body around the catwalk area or something like that. And he's like, be careful of the speed bump. And he drags the body over the speed bump. This barely disturbs the announcers whatsoever. It disturbs them so little that we go to Madison Rayne and Lacey Von Erich versus Taylor Wilde and Hamada for the TNA Knockouts tag titles. Yes, it still astounds me that TNA has Knockouts tag titles. Okay. Second thing that's funny. Madison Rayne, instead of choosing Tara as her tag team partner, chose Lacey Von Erich. You've seen Lacey wrestle, right? And you chose her over Tara? Woo! During the match, Tenay asks, what was up with that footage of Abyss just now? Yeah, gee, should we call the police or something? I don't know. So, I wrote in my notes, the announcers were on fire, Taz especially. Lacey hits her signature move. She has one. I'm serious. She has one. Lacey hits... Actually, she may have two. I've seen her bust out the claw. She actually does the Von Erich claw. Really? And you know what? I don't have any footage of this, but I swear to God, look for it. There's probably footage on YouTube of Lacey Von Erich busting out the Von Erich claw. It's just like, seriously, the most ridiculous thing ever. But Lacey busts out her other signature move, which is a handspring back elbow, where there's a person in the corner, kind of slouched in the corner, and she does like a backflip and then hits the elbow. So she does that. Taz asks the question, I still don't understand that maneuver. Maybe the backflip makes it hurt more? Good one, Taz. Righteous on. Just... Taz single-handedly buried Lacey Von Erich and her one signature move by saying it's completely pointless and it probably doesn't hurt all that much. So why the fuck does she do it? I don't know. So, during the match, Lacey gets completely destroyed, and I wrote in my notes, Hamada could probably carry a bag of shit to a good match, and maybe Madison should have chosen one as her tag partner. Tommy Dreamer comes to the ring. This is the first thing I noticed. Actually, I noticed this at Hardcore Justice, and I thought I was crazy. Because I thought, there's no way they listened to this and they were like, that's a good idea. Okay? And I'll explain this, but I listened to this, I was like, what am I hearing that right? I thought maybe I was just like, the voices in my head were kind of superimposing a thought that couldn't possibly be, because it was so stupid. I was like, there's no way they actually did that. There's no way I actually heard this. Okay. So, Tommy Dreamer's music is, if you remember in ECW, he came out to, The Man in the Box. He comes out to The Man in the Box. And so, they can't use that, obviously. So, as they do with almost all of the WWE rejects, TNA has some knockoff music. So, like, Ric Flair comes out to kind of a jazzy version of the 2001, also Spake Zarathustra theme. Who else? Rob Van Dam kind of comes out to his da-da-da-da-da theme. Who else? Team 3D kind of comes out to the Power Man 5000-ish music. They all kind of do that thing where there's like knockoff music, and there's probably a bunch of other guys. Even Mr. Anderson's new theme sounds almost exactly like his old theme. So, Tommy Dreamer comes to the ring, and his music sounds like the Man in the Box, kind of. So it kind of does the same thing where it's like dun 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 dun, but it's kind of got that same bass line. But instead of lyrics, there are no lyrics to this song. It doesn't go, I'm the man in the box. It doesn't, none of that. Instead of that, it goes, Dun, 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 dreamer. And I'm doing it way more justice than it deserves, because all it does is it says dreamer over and over again during the song, but it's almost like a guy with his fingers shoved up his nose singing to Man in the Box, but only thing he's singing is the word dreamer. So it goes dun 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 dun, dreamer, dun, 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 dreamer. I'm dead serious. I heard that at Hardcore Justice, and I was like, they did not just do that. I thought maybe Miles was doing that, because we watched it together. I was like, but it's kind of one of those things where somebody, like, we were goofing on the show the whole time, and so like when something funny happens, I just assumed he was like dreamer. I don't know why I thought that, but I was like, there's no way Miles would, like, there's no way TNA would do. They did that. They did it's worse somehow than Rob Van Dam's fucking 4-year-old composed music. And it's so stupid, in fact, I think I want that to be Sean's new music for when he does the WWE stuff. I'm going to see if I can give you a good sample. So let me think of some lyrics for this. Well, this isn't very hard. So the song would be like, dun 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 dun, Sean Faust. Dun, 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 Sean Faust. There's your song, Sean. Enjoy. I'm sure somebody will cut one together with Tommy's shitty fucking music. If I have to sit with Rob Van Dam's music, you get fucking Man in the Dreamer. This, once again, I must engage in hyperbole. This was probably the most excruciating segment I've ever seen on an Impact broadcast. And it was actually kind of like, when I stopped to think about why I hated this segment so much, like, my first knee-jerk reaction was that this segment had gone on for probably 25 minutes. An unbelievable amount of time. It went on for Tommy just talked and talked and talked, and he proceeded to talk for the better part of a half hour. For the majority of a half hour. Like, it must have been 25 minutes. Because I remember thinking this, like, I saw this at like 9 o'clock. Something round about that. And I remember thinking this segment was going on long. And it was 9:05. And then I sat there, and I continued to sit there, and the next time I checked, this segment was still going on. It was like 9:27. This segment was unfucking believable. And it sucked, not just because it was a 25-minute, go-nowhere, do-nothing segment that just was boring and went forever. It sucked on like 4 other levels, arguably worse than just sheer boredom. And I'll get to this. So I haven't even explained what the fuck happened in this segment. So Tommy comes out in a suit and tie. And he says, look, EV2's at home. I'm the only one here. I want to call Fortune out because I don't want to see any more of my friends get hurt. And so Fortune comes out. And of course, all 6 of Fortune come out. And Ric Flair is so proud of his men, which are the resurrection of the 4 horsemen, that he holds his hands out, he looks at them, and he's like, 4. There's 6 of you! 7 counting Rick! I'm sorry. I will never get over this. I've lost my place entirely. Okay. So, Fortune gets in the ring. And Tommy says, I don't want to see my friends get hurt anymore, so I'm tired of fighting. I'm calling a truce. This is over. Truce? Tommy, EV2 hasn't won a match since EV2 started. And Stevie Richards does not count. EV2 has been completely and utterly dominated from beginning to end by Fortune. Tommy lost an I Quit match by getting a fork shoved in his eye by AJ, proving that AJ is even more hardcore than Tommy. This isn't a truce, Tommy. You lost. It's called a surrender. He then proceeds, and my brother, as soon as he started doing this, asked, okay. He then turns to James Storm for beer money, and he says, Storm, you have more talent in your little finger than the Sandman. To which I thought, wow. I mean, I agree, but way to pretty much completely bury the Sandman there. Like, for now and all time. Like, more than the Sandman ever had. I was like, okay, Tommy, why are you kissing up now? And, by the way, that one sentence I said probably took maybe, and even with my elaboration, probably took 30 seconds. Tommy took 4 minutes to say all this. You've gone on to greater tag team success than anyone I've ever known, including this Lane guy who founded the Midnight Express. And you got more talent. Like, 4 minutes talking to James Storm. And only James Storm. And when he was done, he turns to Kazarian. And my brother says, oh, sweet Christ. Is he going to do this for every member of Fortune? Yes. Yes, he does. He says Tommy says he got Kazarian his first job in the WWE. Bad move mentioning the WWE, Tommy. And he would have never met his wife if not for Tommy. This took 4 or 5 minutes. Took me 30 seconds to say it, but of course Tommy had to get all emotional and say, like, you're the greatest thing I've ever seen in the WWE, and I got you a job in 4 or 5 minutes. Then he turns to Matt Morgan, and he says he met Morgan when he was a bouncer at a nightclub. And this is where I wrote, is he seriously going to do this to all 6 of these assholes? And how everyone thought Matt Morgan was going to be the biggest thing in the WWE, how he was going to be the next Kane and The Undertaker. But now, this is where Tommy is so full of shit. Tommy says, but nobody says that anymore. Now that he's in TNA, kids everywhere are saying that they want to be the next Matt Morgan. No. No, they're not. They're really not. Tommy, you are full of shit beyond your years, and you were always pretty full of shit. He says he offered Robert Roode a job in the WWE, and Robert turned it down. He's now mentioned the WWE like 6 times during the course of this segment, and we're about 25 minutes in. So he talks to all of them. And as soon as he turns to Rick, he says, you're the greatest inspiration I've ever had in this business. And he says, you're the greatest wrestler I've ever known. And you're not only the dirtiest player in the game. And this is where he starts to cry again. Tommy fucking Dreamer, the hardcore icon, cries more than the fucking guy who says, leave Britney alone. It's pathetic. And now that we've talked to every other member of Fortune, Tommy proceeds to drop to his knees and just suck Ric Flair's withered cock for like 8 minutes. He's like, you're the greatest wrestler I've ever seen in my life. You fight and you bleed and you sweat, and it must be so hard. And you inspire me so much. I mean, Tommy, you got to work the shaft a little bit. You got to show the balls some love when you need. And he's like, He's like, I know you don't like hardcore wrestling, but if ever there was a hardcore wrestler, Rick, it's you. My God, Tommy. Tommy, could you come off as any more of a toadying, ingratiating bitch than you did in this segment? Tommy not only blew Rick, he pretty much let Fortune line up and he blew them like circus seals. Like, just like all 7 members of Fortune in line. He sucked 14 balls off that night. And like I said, this went on forever. It was fucking boring. Nobody in the crowd gave a shit. But more than that, again, at the end of any given segment, I ask the simple question: the fuck did that accomplish? Tommy goes in the ring, admits defeat, throws several members of EV2 under the bus, including the Sandman, and then proceeds to tell everyone over the course of a half hour how great Fortune is. The bad guys. So I actually started thinking at some point, like, what are they doing here? Because AJ, like, I knew this was going to end in Tommy getting beat up, because that's how it goes, because they're the heel group. But as this was going on, and AJ's like, you know what, Tommy, I respect you. I was like, the only way this could possibly not be a waste of time is if they were turning Fortune babyface. And they so worked. Because, like, what were we trying to do here? You had Tommy Dreamer, the good guy icon, according to their logic, going down the line and telling the world in excruciating detail how great and legendary and better than everyone else they all are. You know, how great Beer Money is, how great Kazarian is, how AJ is, quote, the best wrestler in the business today, how Ric Flair is quote, not only the dirtiest player in the game, you are the game. And when you quit, it'll be the saddest day in my life. That may be true, but you don't say that about the bad guys. The bad guys are supposed to be cowards. The bad guys are supposed to suck. The bad guys are supposed to be guys you boo! This was so fucking pointless. And then Tommy looks like a complete fucking idiot when, of course, it turns out Fortune's lying and they just beat him up. So then it gets dumber. Just when you think you've hit the rock bottom, Dixie busts out a pickaxe. So they start beating up Tommy. And then some weirdo runs in the ring. I thought it was Surge. So some weirdo runs in the ring wearing a choir robe, like a white diaphanous choir robe, and jumps on Tommy's body. And not missing a beat, Fortune's like... So they start stomping on the guy. And they pull him up, and it's Brian Kendrick. Now, rewind. If you don't know, the last week they were doing a 4-on-4 elimination match between Fortune and ECW. And they didn't have a fourth guy because Stevie was fighting Abyss and beat Abyss clean. But they needed a fourth guy. And so in the locker room comes Brian Kendrick. And he says, I want to be your guy. I want to join your team. They never ask why. He doesn't tell them why. Mick Foley just says, this guy's crazy. I like him. So, now, Brian Kendrick has chosen to jump in the ring and use his body as a shield for Tommy Dreamer. I may never know why. I may never care. I don't really care now. But can you imagine, like, honestly, I am as close to a professional critic as this shit as you're ever going to see. And I don't know what's going on. How is the average audience member supposed to, like, what's the audience... Okay, let me just run through what the average audience member is thinking at this moment. This is stupid shit. Okay, let's just say I'm a huge mark for the show. I am the perfect sheep for TNA. Oh no! They're beating up Tommy! I hope someone from ECW comes to save him. Alright, somebody come to save him! Who's that? It's Brian Kendrick! Why does Brian Kendrick care about ECW? Was he in ECW? I don't know. But yay! This is some hardcore stupid shit. So they beat up Brian Kendrick. And then it gets dumber. Because Brian... Where's my glasses? I wrote this down too. Fortune starts to leave. And Brian gets a microphone. Tommy, meanwhile, has just vanished. Like, they beat him up so bad he turned to coins. I don't know. So, Brian gets a mic. And I quote, this is what he says. Are any of you brave enough to fight me now? You thrive off intimidation. My vibrational frequencies are too high for that. You thrive off of fear. My zero... I'll start again. You thrive off of intimidation. My vibrational frequencies are too high for that. You thrive off of fear. My 0 point is a great distance from fear. What you are is low vibrational reptilians. What I am is a descended god! Commercial. This is going to be the worst Wrestle ever. Alright. Booking exercise. You've got a problem. You've got ECW hired. And, let's be honest, none of them can wrestle. So you're posed with a problem. How do we make them look even competitive against Fortune, who are great wrestlers? And you go, well, you put wrestlers who can wrestle in the group with EV2. Okay. So, like, what about Brian Kendrick? He's not doing anything. And you're like, that's a good plan. Let's put Brian Kendrick in with the ECW guys, and he can wrestle, and it'll work. And you're like, all right, but he has nothing really to do with EV2. Why does he want to join them? And this being TNA, Vince Russo's like, you think too hard. So, Brian Kendrick is now a diehard follower of EV2. And now that he's got a microphone, you have your chance to give him some character. You have a chance to explain something. You have a chance to make his babyface turn, of which he was a heel before. You have some chance to justify his babyface turn in aligning with ECW, in wanting to face Fortune for little to no gain, and in fact, pretty much fighting a losing battle against far overwhelming odds. So, you have him protect Tommy, and then, in a very ballsy display of manliness, stands alone in the middle of the ring with no backup against Fortune, and he grabs a mic, and he says, what you are is low vibrational reptilians. What I am is a descended god! Brian, what you are is a descended testicle. Just cut a normal promo saying like, oh, you think you're tough? I'm tougher, fight me. That's all you had to say, Brian. Commercial. We come back and Matt Morgan has answered the challenge. This gets dumber. Morgan proceeds to beat his ass utterly. He beats Bryan up for like 5 minutes, has him pinned. Ref counts 1, 2. Matt Morgan pulls him up because he's not done punishing him yet, so he calls for the elevator. He's playing to the crowd. All of a sudden, Brian Kendrick springs out of the corner with a drop kick and pins Morgan 1, 2, 3. I just about fucking turned the TV off in disgust. This was bullshit. And I got... You know what the thing is? I already got so mad at the fucking Fortune segment. I was so bored and so pissed off. This is the worst shit. Matt Morgan. The next Kane. The next Undertaker, who Tommy says is now greater than both of them, so that kids now wish they were Matt Morgan, just got pinned clean by Brian Kendrick after a single kick in the face. A dead man could book better wrestling than this. Just by laying down and shutting the fuck up. Brian Kendrick. And then Brian runs away. Our brave hero, who is a descended god, runs away. This is... I need a second. This is where the show goes so far down, past rock bottom. It passes through the molten core of the earth and actually starts to get hilarious again. I'm going to read my notes. And I swear to God, I did not make a single second of this up. I swear. This happens on the camera. Backstage, Abyss has one person chained to a table and another person hung from the ceiling by his wrists. He says that not only does he have Janice, he has Bob. He pulls out a branding iron which has 10, 10, 10 on it, which he calls Bob the Branding Iron, which is glowing red hot. He then plunges Bob the Branding Iron into the abdomen of the helpless man for at least 20 seconds while hilarious plumes of smoke rise from his gut. This is less of a branding and more of a Michael Myers murder in progress. I'm going to repeat what I just said. He has a man helpless on a slab, chained hand and ankle. He rips the man's clothes off and then pulls out a red-hot branding iron called Bob and then shoves it into the man's gut with his back to the camera so we can't actually see it, but we know what's happening. He shoves the branding iron into his stomach and holds it there for at least 20 seconds as this huge column of smoke erupts from this man's torso and the man screams bloody murder. And Abyss is laughing the whole time. Then we go to the announce table where Taz goes, that was horrifying. Abyss is clearly out of his mind. And nobody's felt Abyss's wrath more than the former World Heavyweight Champion, Rob Van Dam, who we've got on the phone. Okay, well, I'm guessing there's one man who would argue with you about the nobody feeling Abyss's wrath more than Rob Van Dam thing. Who could that be? Oh yeah, the guy being tortured backstage! They get Rob on the phone. Rob could not sound happier to be on the show. He says... They ask him, how you feeling, Rob? And Rob's like, oh, I'm feeling great right now, man. I don't know why people are so concerned about me asking if I'm all right. I've never had people ask me. I'm a tough guy, you know? And really, as an athlete, it's all about improving yourself. And really, with this, it was just a setback, you know? Like, I just had to improve myself from negative 100%. So, really, all this did was set me back a little bit. Really, the man who beat you into a comatose state with a 2x4 with 7-inch nails shoved through it, that was a minor setback to you, Rob. It's good to see you're still positive through this whole thing. And I'm ignoring... Once again, the announcers go, well, what Rob says, they're like, when can we see you back again, Rob? And Rob's like, you know what? The doctors say I shouldn't come back, but I'm going to be back in the Impact Zone next week, dudes. And the announcer's like, that's great news. Let's go on to our next match. And they do. Do they not seem alarmed? Hello, 911? Yeah, excuse me. There appears to be a man torturing another man with a red-hot branding iron! This is going on now! Like, in context of the show, this is happening now! Abyss is branding a man with a hot iron! He is kidnapped and is torturing 2 men! Live! On tape! In front of a national audience. This isn't hard. This is like, call the cops. You know, like when I said Samoa Joe got kidnapped by ninjas, that was like a 30-second bit. It happened on TV, but I couldn't identify any of them that were wearing masks. Like, I was like, I didn't get a license plate number, although if you rewound the tape, you probably could have. But like, you know, that was a kidnapping, and I was offended by that. This is like... We know who it is. We know where he is. We know who the victims are. Or at least anyone who works at the Impact Zone should fucking know who the victims are. And, like, we have evidence. The man has 310s branded on his fucking stomach. And, like, oh, by the way, the cameraman who was taping all this, thanks for helping. Abyss took no notice of this cameraman. And the cameraman... as he's watching a man get a red-hot branding iron shoved into his solar plexus, just kept taping. TNA cameramen must see weird shit because they're not fazed by any of it. Nor do they feel compelled to call the authorities for any given incident. You know, there's wrestling, and then there's a man who is literally attempting to commit attempted murder on a show. There's no... logic. There's like, this takes place, you know, honestly, the only way this works is if this takes place in some dystopian future, some horrible cartoon world where ex-convicts are placed in death matches in a TNA ring. Because that's the only reason why nobody is alarmed by any of this. Show continues. Generation Me comes out, and they say, like RVD, if you can't defend the title in 30 days, you have to vacate it like they injured Alex Shelley, so he's not coming back. So Saban comes out, and they attack, and that was actually well-booked stuff, and it was so stunning, I just barely made a note of it because I was raving about the fucking torture. Okay, last match, and I must have been talking for about 2 hours now. Jeff Hardy versus Kurt Angle in a no-time limit match. They started this match about 15 minutes before the end of the show. So, I guess there's no time limit as long as they wrap it up before the end of the show. But as it turns out, this wouldn't be a problem. Because they did go beyond the time frame of the show, and they just continued the second half of it into Reaction, which is the third-hour show after Impact. So, that was a clever way to get us to watch Reaction, Dixie. They must want to do this with every main event, where whenever there's a main event with what they consider to be severe political ramifications, like anything to do with Sting and Nash, or anything to do with the world title picture, apparently Dixie Carter has a vested interest in all of these matches, and so she has like a seat. She has a chosen out special seat in the Impact Zone. And so every 2 minutes in this match as people are getting hurt and people are landing moves and there's twists of fates and whispers in the winds and Olympic slams and stuff like that. We have to go to the audience to see what Dixie thinks. And as I've said, Dixie just has the same look of mild bemusement on her face this whole time. So they go beyond the frame of impact. It was a good match. And what happens is the referee, Brian Hebner, gets knocked out during the course of the match. But immediately Earl Hebner comes out, so there's not a real big problem. So Earl keeps officiating. And then Brian Hebner regains his composure. And now there's 2 referees in the ring. Earl could just leave. Or Brian, who just got kicked in the face, could just leave. But no, there's 2 referees in the ring. And I think you can tell where they were going with this. Because at the end of it, Kurt Angle puts Jeff in an ankle lock, and Jeff returns by throwing him in kind of like a knee bar ankle lock type thing. And so they both had each other in like a knee bar or a toe hold or whatever you call it. And all of a sudden, it happens that both of their shoulders are on the mat. So Earl drops down and starts counting 1, and Brian drops down and starts counting the other, and they both count to 3 because both their shoulders are down, and it's a double pin. And a lot of people on Twitter, I just checked my Twitter before I started, and people were actually kind of expecting me to really hit the roof on that one. After all the shit I'd just seen with the fucking Abyss and the branding iron. Oh, by the way, Dixie, I know that you've got a lot of pressures and there's a lot of issues on your mind right now with the world title picture. You know, I can understand there's a lot of controversy with the world title and the fact that Rob Van Dam is returning from injury sustained at the hands of Abyss. Gee, I wonder what Abyss is doing right now. Oh, that's right. He's torturing a man backstage with a branding iron! Now! He's torturing a man in your building now! Dixie doesn't seem to care. There's a live, brutal torture proceeding in Dixie's own building. Do the announcers call the police or call for security? Does Dixie even seem alarmed that 2 of her staff are currently being murdered on national TV? And there's a double pin. Like, seriously, in the face of that, like, who gives a fuck about a double pin? But apparently they do, because they double pin and Bischoff comes out. And Bischoff, he gets in Dixie's face and he says something, and Dixie goes... I showed way too much life in that one. Dixie just crosses her arms and looks into the ring like... She's not alarmed by the proceeding backstage. She's not surprised. She's not surprised by the double pin, the exceedingly rare draw that she's just witnessed twice in a row. She's not frustrated that the title match is again in jeopardy. She's not even visibly upset that Eric Bischoff is coming out and overruling her again by declaring it officially a triple threat match at Bound for Glory. She crosses her arms and looks in the ring and is just like... That's all she ever does. She is such a horrible TV personality. I don't know who said that she had a place in front of the camera. Like, I don't want to be that guy who says, like, you should not get in front of the camera. You should not, pursue your dream of being a TV star. But seriously, some people are not cut out for a TV persona. Some people are just not that outgoing, not that expressive, and she is like, honest to God, if you just took a Xerox copy of that expression and taped it to a plank of wood, you would get the exact same result. Like, let's see what Dixie thinks. That's it. So, of course, now the announcers are apparently way more horrified at this than Abyss. So they're like, oh my God, Eric Bischoff just overruled Dixie Carter. Like, what does this mean? And so, they, like, of course, all of Reaction, yeah, I saw Reaction as well. So all of Reaction, they're like, politically, what does this mean for the political landscape of TNA? We're going to talk to everyone involved and see what they think. And so Eric Bischoff's back there and is like, politically, what are you talking about? I made the right decision for TNA. Like, I mean, no, we've had 2 matches so far with no clear winner. This is a triple threat match. I'm just trying to do what's best for the business. And Dixie Carter, and they're like, but what about Dixie Carter, who was overruled in the most controversial decision of the night? And Dixie Carter, she's trying to look upset, and she's trying to look frustrated or vexed that she's been overruled. And so she's trying to, like, stalk backstage or, like, storm around like she's mad or frustrated. But she's so hard to read. You know, she has no expressive facial... She has no expression in her face. She has no body language. She's like, when she's mad is the exact same expression as when she's jubilant. You know, so she just kind of casually walks backstage, and they're like, Dixie, what do you think about the overruling of Eric Bischoff? And she's like, no comment. And she just walks back, and, like, she might very well be a Cylon. Hell, Cylon's got more. She might very well be like a Cyberman. But they're like, well, I'll tell you what this is. Honestly, I'll tell you what it means. Is they're building up towards Bound for Glory when, you know, the whole they arrive and it's going to be the whole political landscape changing once and for all, and Hulk Hogan and Eric and Dixie are ousted from their thrones of power and stuff like that. That whole thing that Sting and Nash are talking about, and Abyss and the Pope being mad and joining with Sting and Nash, and it's all going to tie together, and there's going to be some new faction. I'm guessing it's going to be the NWO or something equally stupid. But it's all going to tie together, like, you know, they're going to, like, seriously, I think Dixie is really, Vince or Dixie are going to be crafting, like, this major storyline, and when it all comes together, they're going to be like, see, oh, it built over the course of 4 months, and you didn't even see it happening, like, I don't even know, especially when it turns out, like, Sting and Nash are going to turn out to be the good guys in all this, and they were telling us that it was all smoke and mirrors and deception, and see, it turns out Nash and Sting were telling the truth, and Jeff Jarrett was really the liar, and, you know, like, I can see where they're going with this, and trust me, I see it a mile away. Abyss just tortured a man with a branding iron on national TV. Next week, do you think he's even gonna get reprimanded? No. Name one other job where you could tape yourself taking a branding iron to one of your colleagues, except maybe for what I do. Like, you know, if I strapped Bennett the Sage down and took a branding iron to his genitals, I might not get fired from that guy with the glasses. But that's about it. In fact, now that I think about it, I should give it a try. I don't know. Anyway, that's Wrestle. Tune in next week as Impact gets even dumber with the return of the ex-champion Rob Van Dam before the tournament to decide the owner of his vacant title is determined. I quit. Again.